Hello, everyone, and this is Dr. Cunningham on Life Lessons, and I am so grateful to have a new guest with me today. Her name is Mariah Lyttle, and Mariah Lyttle is actually in theater. A Broadway play that she was in was Bad Cinderella, where she was in part of the ensemble and Cinderella understudy. And then she was also on a national tour of The Color Purple that happened during COVID, and she played Celie. And now also regionally, she was in Dreamgirls, where she played Laurel at Paramount Theaters in Illinois. And so I'm so glad Mariah decided, because I know that she's, busy, Miss New York theater, just living the dream, that she decided to stop over to Life Lessons with Dr. Cunningham. So, hey, Mariah, how you doing today?
Hey, Dr. Cunningham, I'm doing so well. Thank you for having me on this platform. Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you. How you doing?
I'm doing great, but then I'm also ecstatic because you are on my channel. So
I'm happy to
because
be
you're on
here.
my channel today, I'm already on cloud nine, because I'm like, this is my first, theater actor that's on my going to be on my platform. And so I'm looking forward to having a great discussion. And so, essentially, on Life Lessons, we're always discussing, life and what you've learned from it, and also what you learned through your career, and also balancing career and life. So I just would like to start off from the beginning of, like, how did you get into theater, and also when, did you start theater?
Yeah. I started singing in my church choir. Well, yes, my church choir at 10. I've always been singing, and the rule was that you had to be 13 to join the choir, and God smiled upon me. No, my pastor knew, and she saw something in me and allowed me to join the choir at 10. So that's really kind of where it started for me, was at church, which is like kind of the story for a lot of people. I started theater in high school. It was like a happy accident, kind of. I had no idea
Oh,
what theater was. The only show I knew at that time was Dreamgirls, because Beyonce was in it and it had just come out a few
yes,
years
Beyonce.
before. Yes, I didn't even know it was an actual musical. But so there was a part-time performing arts high school in my town, and I auditioned for it. I sang one night only, which I have no business singing because I would never play Effie a day in my life. But I sang that and I got into the school. And that was my start in musical theater. And my very first musical was Footloose. And I was like, this is kind of cool. Like, I like, dressing up and playing on stage and learning dances and learning lines and stuff like that. It's really cool because I don't have to think about my life for the hours that I'm on stage. Um,
Mhm.
I did ragtime that same year, and that's when I was like, oh, I think I can do this for the rest of my life. Like, I think this is it for me. Um, and so I started pursuing it. I started actually pursuing it. I started getting serious about it, and I started auditioning for schools my junior year of high school, and I got into Ithaca College, and I got a degree in musical theater. Graduated in 2019, right before the pandemic, and that's when I started
Nice.
working professionally.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your journey from the beginning. What I'm wondering is, because especially because you mentioned Beyonce, and then also understanding that, when you are auditioning for particular parts, sometimes you may be singing a song or saying a monologue that may not, align specifically with how, you're living your life, or where you are in your stage of life. So it's like,
Mhm.
what do you do to prepare for that space? Because when I think of Beyonce, it's like there's Beyonce and then there's Sasha Fierce, like when she's on the
Right.
stage. Like, so how do you prepare for, especially roles that you feel like have distance from your real life?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of prep work that has to go into it even before you hit the room. As soon as you get the script, I like to, when I got, for example, the script for Dreamgirls, when I did Laurel this past summer, I read through the script, I highlighted all of my lines, and I just read it for what it was in relation to other characters, but specifically, what did the text say about this character and how much can I relate to it? Now, I got it easy with Laurel to an extent that I could relate to it a lot, but there are certain situations that I had to pull from other people or other experiences. And there's this great playwright. His name is Stanislavski, and he has a quote that says, "You either lived it, seen it, or imagined it." I believe that's Stanislavski, if I'm not mistaken. And that's a quote that one of my acting teachers taught me in college. And I've carried that with me because there are always moments where I'm like, well, I have no experience with this. I don't know how I'm going to pull this out. I don't know how I'm going to do this. But then I think about the quote and I'm like, oh, well, so-and-so, I've seen so-and-so do this, or this is kind of like the time that I thought about this, and this. So how can I make that happen for this script? So it's not only what you've experienced directly, because that is very much a tool and that can very much help you, get into the world of the character. But if you haven't lived it, someone else has, and you've either seen it, you either lived it, or you've at least imagined it. So that's something that I use to help me as I get ready for roles. But there really is a sense of kind of indulging yourself into the world of the character. You have to think about the time period. You have to think about what was life like for the person of their stature, of their kind, of their race in that time period. And again, reading a bunch of stuff from that time period or watching stuff from that time period. I watched a lot of videos of the Supremes when I was doing Dreamgirls, because that's what pretty much it's based off of. But that energy of a girl group, in the 60s is something that I've never experienced, but I've seen it. I know Diana Ross. I know Mary Wilson. I know all those people. So watching those videos and kind of getting into that world, it was hard. It was hard. I'm using this specifically because it's such a good and meaty role. But I was never one to be a showgirl. I like the deep and like dramatic plays and musicals and stuff like that. But this one really tested me because I never really considered myself to be a dancer. And although I cried a lot, that choreographer did not let up off of me. And I appreciate it because it kind of unlocked something in me. So again, this is a world that I've always seen, even with the movie Dreamgirls, but I've never actually done it. So it takes a lot of work, but it's all worth it.
And what you're discussing or talking about, it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, it has to do with method acting, like, because it's very methodical as far as how to prepare for a particular character.
Yeah, to an extent.
To an extent. Okay. So, because the reason why I'm mentioning this is because it sounds quite similar to the process of being able to have compassion for someone else's lived experience. And even as a clinician myself, there are times when I'm working with families, or even as a clinician, I'll pause and say, okay, well, I wonder what it's like from their perspective. So I step into their shoes to get a sense of their life. How would they feel if they went through this? Or how would I feel if I actually considered their life, and what they've experienced? So there's a part of me that wonders, how do you establish demarcations or boundaries? Say, for example, if you've had to play a character and be in character for a tour of 3 or 4 months, where you've essentially breathed and lived, Laurel, or breathed and lived Celie. And Celie, when people really look at Color Purple in her story, that girl was traumatized. She went through it.
Yeah.
And so it's how do you almost kind of dismantle or kind of let go of that particular mindset or those emotions that are associated with those characters, especially if you like those dramatic characters that feel a lot, that express a lot with regards to life?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a good question. And I think to touch on the method acting, the reason why I said to an extent is because it's very easy for people to be that character all day, every day, and get lost in it. You think about Heath Ledger, who is very widely known for his method acting for the Joker. He lived and breathed that. He woke up every day as the Joker. He ate his breakfast as the Joker. He moved through time and space as the Joker. So much so that it was hard for him to let some of that go. And that's where I find personally the danger in method acting, because if I were to hang on to Celie, which for a while I had trouble kind of letting that go when the curtain came down, I still felt like Celie and I had a hard time letting that go for a while. I went home to visit my school, Ithaca College, and I was talking to my acting teacher, and I was like, I need help because I don't want to feel like this past 11 o'clock every night.
Understood.
I want to leave that on the stage because it's meaty. And while I'm doing it on the stage, it feels fulfilling because I'm telling someone else's story, and I know that there are parts that I have lived and I've experienced, but I know that there are parts that people in the audience have experienced as well. And I love being that vessel, but that vessel stops at 10:30 or 11 o'clock when that curtain comes down. And I have to live for myself again, but I just didn't know how. So I was talking to my acting teacher, and she said, you have to think of it like you have to think of the show like a rainstorm, not in a negative way, but just like think of it like a rainstorm. And you, as the actor, you have this umbrella. You are the actor, and the umbrella is your character. And as you're walking through this rainstorm, you have this umbrella that's covering you, that's protecting you, that's, letting you stay safe in the show. Well, once the rainstorm is over, once the show is over, there's no need for the character, or there's no need for the umbrella. There's no need for the character to still be around if the show is done, if the curtain is closed. So I use that metaphor, especially in shows that are deep light color purple, to remind myself, okay, we sang the last song, the curtain is down, the rainstorm is over. Let me hang up this umbrella. I'm not throwing it away, nothing's wrong with it. I'm just gonna hang it up and use it for the next rainstorm, which would happen the next day. So the idea of the visualization for me of seeing the rainstorm go away, taking the umbrella, putting it down, allows me to let myself let go of that character, take off that character, put it down, walk out of that environment, and just live my life for the next 12 hours until I have to put the umbrella back on, or put the character back on, use the umbrella again, and walk through that rainstorm. So I think mentally, what I'm saying is that there's a mental aspect that has to be present for you to clock in for the job and clock out for your life.
What you're saying is quite wise, and so this is the reason why I always say that wisdom really has less to do with age, and except for those who choose to consistently live a wise life where they can constantly add to their wisdom,
Yeah.
because there's a lot that's learned about the human experience through acting. I mean, because when you're having to be so many different characters, like, being able to experience or to have a sense of what someone would go through that had a completely different life than yourself.
Yeah.
And so what I'm wondering though, because you've made it very clear that ever since you were young, I mean, you started off in the choir at 10 years old because your pastor saw something in you, and you were allowed to sing at 10 when 13 years old was the age. So
Yes.
if you started that young with regards to singing and kind of, focusing on the creative side of life and expression, I would say that it's kind of like you live in a dream now. So what is that like, living the dream? And then how do you maintain a sense of groundedness while also living the dream?
Mm. I think I've realized that within this dream, there is a ton of reality. There's a lot of reality that kind of brings me back down to earth. And that's not to say that I'm not living my dream, because I've always dreamed to be a performer. I've always dreamed to be on Broadway, but what I didn't account for in those dreams was all of the stuff that comes with it. And that's hard to go through each and every day as an actor. So kind of finding the balance with that has been tricky. It's been hard. But I think it's so worth it, because I'll explain. So
Thank you.
theater takes a lot of time and energy, just in general. When you're in a show, specifically like on Broadway, and for me, my experience was putting up a new show. So we had rehearsal for about a month. We started tech, and tech and previews lasted for about another month. And during that process, we would be called from at least 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and we wouldn't go home until 11 o'clock a lot of times. That's my entire day. I wake up, I eat breakfast, and then I get on the train, and then I stay at the theater for 12 hours with a lunch break. But like, we go from rehearsal, dinner break, and then we do the show. And in that rehearsal, things are changing every day because it's a preview process. A lot of these changes are based on how the audience is reacting to what we have. So at this point, once we started previews, everything we learned in the rehearsal studio, about 75% of it is gone, because we now have to adapt for the actual stage, the props that we have, the costumes that we have, the audience and how they react to certain things. So that is a lot, physically and mentally. And then on top of that, I still have to live my life. So there's an emotional aspect too. There's still like, I'm still trying to be social as I can be, which is not very much in a schedule like this. So it's kind of draining, it's kind of exhausting. And then there's always the internal emotional aspect of it. Like, am I doing enough work? That wasn't good today. How do I make it better? So-and-so did this. How can I be like them? Why doesn't it look like this? Even as an understudy, that was a thought process that I had a lot. And it's hard not to put that on yourself, because I do believe that everyone is in their specific places in the show for a reason. But
Mhm.
it's hard not to, at least for me, be like, well, maybe I wasn't the lead because I didn't do this, this, and this, or maybe I wasn't the alternate, which in this case is someone who went on once a week. Maybe I wasn't the alternate
Mhm.
because I didn't do this, this, and this like they did. And it gets to be very draining and very daunting mentally. So putting that on top of the already 12-hour workday, it is a lot. It is a lot. And that's when I realized this is a dream, but there's a lot of reality that has to be lived in order for this
Mhm.
dream to take off. And it's very hard. So what I've realized is that it really didn't happen until we opened the show and I had more time to myself, but I had to find something that wasn't related to theater that I can escape to. And that could
Mm.
be anything. I talked to a few actors about this about a few weeks ago, and they were saying that I play Sims on my computer. That's how I escape from theater. Or I read books. That's how I escape from theater. For me, I write music now. And it's
Mhm.
been fun because I get to be in control of that. And with theater, you always have to be listening to someone else unless you're the director or the producer. Otherwise,
Mhm.
you're the actor. You have to listen to whatever rules are in place, and you kind of have to be a yes man to whatever, to a certain degree. You know, you have a voice and you should share their voice, but you,
Mhm.
at the end of the day, don't get to make a lot of the choices on your own like you would if you were making your own music or writing your own screenplays or writing your own plays. So kind of tapping into that creative world has been very helpful, and it's allowed the dream to stay the dream, because if I tapped into that reality more than I am right now, it'd be very hard for me want to continue that dream. And that's the honest truth.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, because what you're speaking to is the balance or the reality of acting,
Yeah.
meaning that the rigorous schedule, as well as the commitment to fulfilling the role, or bringing to life a particular character per the writer's vision.
Yeah.
And so what you're speaking of is, many times, what, depending on each person, which is the reason why every person should be involved in a career that really does align with their temperament. Because if they're not willing to kind of listen to be molded for a particular role, then it'll make it tough for them to actually
Yeah.
to do well in the profession. It sounds like what you're saying as well.
Yeah. There's a lot of give and take that happens when you are doing a show. And I do think there is definitely room for an actor to express themselves creatively in a role. The way that I would have played Cinderella is different than the way that Linady, who was the full-time Cinderella, played it 7 times a week. But that was a little bit
Understood.
different than how Savvy played it when they went on for that one
Mhm.
performance a week. And that's all different from the way that the other understudy, whose name is Paige, that was different from how she would have played it if she had gone on as well.
Mhm.
So that being said, it also had to be under the umbrella of the director's vision. And
Mhm.
we kind of had like guidelines that we had to stay within, but we were still able to make it our own. So I think there is some creative flexibility, but for me, I want more.
Understood.
And there's a fine line. You can't tell the director what to do. In most cases, there's a give and take. You can collaborate, and depending on the director, they'll be open to hearing certain things. Some directors are not like that. So that's
Mhm.
where it gets to be a little bit challenging. And you typically don't know what you're walking into until you walk into it.
Mhm.
So having having a say in how you express yourself creatively, for me, means the world. When I can write music and I can say, no, this isn't good, and then I can fix it because it's my music. Or I can play it, I can sing it, and I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm going to keep it and I'm going to build onto it because it's my music. I can write stuff and I'd be like, this is great. And then 2 weeks later, I'd be like, actually, I don't want to put this out because it's not where I'm at anymore. I'll save this for another time because it's my music. And having that
Mhm.
ownership and having having that ownership, it's nice in a world where you kind of have to abide by other people's rules and how they move and how they develop things. So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, what it also causes me to think about is, when people are in positions to fulfill a particular role, but there's that creative latitude, and I'm wondering if that's something that shifts over time. Because what you're speaking of is your first like on Broadway experience. Like you've had the traveling Broadway experience, but I'm wondering like have you had conversations with those individuals that have been a part of Broadway for a while? And I'm kind of wondering, does that shift? Meaning, the more a person kind of, has a particular face. Like I forget her name. What is it, like Adriana McDonald, or I
Oh,
forget her.
you're talking about Tina, Adrienne Warren?
Adrienne Warren. She ended up playing in the what was it? Beauty and the Beast, the human remake, and she was the dress, like
Oh, Audrey McDonald.
the
Audrey,
wardrobe, Audrey McDonald. Because she was
yeah.
on Broadway and then ended up expanding to like movies, and I think she has a great voice and also is great in theater, but I'm wondering if there's more creative latitude the more someone is, within the industry. It's almost kind of like, when as a therapist, when I first started, I was an intern. So I had a supervisor who was overseeing everything that I was doing. It was kind of like, Norja, like that. I don't know what method or technique that was, but you're going to have to work on it. And I say, thank you very much. Thank you for the feedback. And then until eventually I got to a place where I was meeting with my own clients on my own, until I was able to start supervising other clients. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then to kind of have a sense of, I always tell people to utilize methods from the perspective of, it might feel like an uncomfortable shoe for a while until you find the shoe that fits you perfectly. And then the shoe isn't wearing you, you are wearing the shoe. I mean,
Yeah.
meaning like, but you get what I'm saying? Like, so it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like it's forced. It's just kind of like a natural part of the process because of the years of time that you have spent to cultivate the skill set and the
And that's
art.
exactly what it is. It takes, for a lot of people, and I'll say this first, theater and everyone's experience of theater is completely subjective because everyone has a different road to where they end up. And I know that typically there is like a ladder that you kind of have to work up to. But all of that is to say, it's easier to get by when you've made a name for yourself or you've made an imprint. So for Audra McDonald, who is a 6-time Tony winner, if she said she wanted to be on someone's TV show, they would be foolish not to put her on their TV show because she has a name. Everybody who's anybody knows who Audra McDonald is. I went to an event about a month ago. It's called Black Women on Broadway. And there was a lot of people within my generation or even just a generation above who were there. And I was like, oh, this is so-and-so that I've seen like on TV, or I've seen this person. I saw Danielle Brooks there, who was in Orange is the New Black, but who was also in The Color Purple. About an hour later, I turned my head and Audra McDonald walks in and the whole room is a buzz because everyone knows who Audra McDonald is. And because she's worked so hard, she's been in the business for over 30 years, made a name for herself, and is now able to cross over. She's got music. She's also been on TV. She's doing the movies. She knows what she's doing. But it helps because she's worked so hard and tirelessly too, all while nurturing a marriage and raising 2 kids. She did a show while she was absolutely pregnant. So
much respect to her. And I just want to make sure that I officially place this on the recording. I apologize for butchering your name in the beginning, Audrey McDowell. See,
Audra
McDonald. I thought it was McDonald. That's that's a shame that I was associated with the franchise. I'm over there thinking about food. I was like, I know her name because McDonald's is.
You gotta do what you gotta do, okay?
I haven't had breakfast or anything this morning. This is early recording, but I have had water and I made sure I exercised.
There you go.
So,
there you go.
But I think we're having a great conversation, and also, to see people that really have given so much time, energy, and discipline and focus to a craft. You can tell those who are truly disciplined with regards to a craft, and every craft. And again, speaking of it from the perspective of theater today, but every craft, every skill set requires a certain level of attention or focus and discipline in order to be at your best. And especially, when it comes to the arts and entertainment, because it's so competitive. Because people are looking at it from the perspective of just wanting to be seen or like their name in lights, but not everyone gets their name in lights. You know what I mean? There are some great artists that I am aware of, and I would listen to their albums, but it's not like they're known like I'm just throwing names for like for a sake of like a Nicki Minaj or something, but they're like underground artists, but they
Yeah.
are really, really good artists. And I
Yeah.
would say, even venture to say that some of them expressed a lot more talent, but maybe it's because of the hunger. Like, and I wonder about your perspective about that, meaning like, because what you mentioned was so honest and real. Like, there are points in time which happen in life where maybe we're not feeling as passionate about what we chose as our career. At the same time, not going to give it up because, the reality is you want to be able to continue on that path.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you motivate yourself when you have a day where you're just like, look, Celie, I just bumped Celie. She could, the umbrella could stay hung up. Like, I'm not even interested in picking up the umbrella and opening it. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah. I think that's real. I think that's actually something that I'm kind of experiencing right now. I think it mostly happens for me when I close a show and I feel like I need a break. I think that as artists, we're always looking for the next thing. We're always looking for the next job. We're always looking for the next opportunity, which is how we get our jobs. There's nothing wrong with that. But what happens for me, and I'm sure a lot of people can agree with this, is that we get into a place of burnout. With Bad Cinderella, we started that process the last week of December, and we were nonstop, no break. I had maybe 2 days off, and that's because I had an injury. And the other day I needed a mental health day. Um, we went from December, the last week of December, to the first week of June, nonstop. That is 6 months. That is a long time to be doing what we're doing over and over and over again, sometimes twice in one day. But like I said, because this is a new musical, there are other things that we had to do too. We had TV appearances, and I, as tired as I wasn't nearly as tired as the leads, because not only did they have to lead the show on Broadway, that's not to discount any of the work that the ensemble did. I definitely had to ice my knees every night and take more baths than I've ever taken in my entire life because my body was falling apart. But the leads were up every night or every day doing interviews for the show and doing TV appearances and doing all of these things. Like, it's just so exhausting. And if you're not careful, you can burn yourself out. So what I find to be helpful to create that balance is to step away for a little bit. Theater's always going to be there. And also, you don't have to be in every show. Newsflash, you're not going to be in every show. And that's something that I have to tell myself. That is not a testament to your talent. It's just right place, right timing. And my right place at that time was Bad Cinderella. And right now, currently, I'm not working on anything except for my music. So that allows me to take a step back from theater, still auditioning, still doing the things, but I'm not really pressed right now because there's time for me. There's time for me to cultivate who I am and replenish, rest and restore. Being able to go to church full time now and really indulging back into that and doing my music and just finding other ways to fulfill myself, because theater can take a lot out of you. So yeah, that answer your question?
Yeah, it really does, and I'm glad to hear you mention the words like replenish, rejuvenate,
Yeah.
rest, restore, connecting with yourself. And when I hear that as connecting with, the divinity within you, but then also with your, human spirit, because of having to essentially live through the eyes of a different personality for a while so that you're able to maintain who you are, which I think is awesome. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, even though, and I don't want to necessarily sound philosophical and really deep at this moment, but I just feel a moment that, could be a great moment to capture for people, because Mariah, it plays different characters for a living, but there are some people that are playing characters to be liked. And when I say that, I mean,
That'll
when
preach.
you look at social media, see, and that's the reason why I said, I was like, I'm not even trying to go there, but at the same time, it's just a perfect segue, because there are individuals who are choosing to be someone else than who they are for the sake of being liked, whether it's in their everyday life or on social media. And so it's okay to be able to pause and just hang up the umbrella and just spend time with determining where you are
Yeah.
and getting to know you, being comfortable in your own skin, And also, if you have a belief where you believe in God, connecting with the source of who created you from the first place. And the reason why I think it's so important is because there's so many people that are essentially in a position where they're able to make careers. And I'm speaking of social media now because it's like a new platform where some people are making careers off of a character they're creating for entertainment for other people, which I
Yeah.
respect because again, that's another form of entertainment. But if there are people that are simply, online that are, posting or doing particulars, as far as actions and behavior for the sake of getting enough hearts,
Yeah.
then that's where it's like it's an opportunity to really kind of look inward to say, are there more people that might actually be burning out than they realize?
Mm.
Meaning like getting so used to kind of, playing a role that they find it tough to find their way to themselves again. And
Yeah.
so especially with the world of AI, and I think we were talking about it earlier because there's so many people that are looking at it from the perspective of technology is starting to take over, steps into a space where humans once were,
Yeah.
to make sure that truly are people are truly remaining authentically human, which means having the emotions, knowing how to manage them, but then also recognizing our divinity as well. I mean, Mariah and I, she mentioned church, and then we grew up in the same church, so we believe in God. We follow Christ. I don't judge anyone with regards to what their belief system is, and I'm sure that within the industry that you're in, you meet a lot of different people that have different beliefs. And we all work together with people, just like I do. I've said it plenty of times before, where I was like, I'm was teaching diversity courses. I've met people that have belief systems that I don't. I
Yeah.
literally just posted something the other day where I was like, I had about 3 spiders that I had to kill in my apartment. I just got a new like yucca plant, and I guess it brought bugs.
Bugs. Yeah.
And then I had to apologize to any Buddhist friends that I have on my list because I don't want them to feel bad that I was killing a spider. But I'm glad to believe, in Jesus Christ. So I'm okay with being able to kill a spider because a spider is not going to bite me while I'm sleeping because I got bug bites from spiders. So they got to go because they're in my domain because they're not paying rent. And therefore,
Okay. 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 It's real.
but but ultimately what I'm wondering about is from your perspective, like how do you maintain your belief system while also being in theater? Because, and again, I'm no pro, but I remember when the few plays that I was in, and there were characters that I had to play who were very different than who I was and didn't believe what I believe. And I may have had to say or act certain ways that was very contrary to how Norja was. Like, how do you maintain your belief, play the characters, but then also like the social life? Because I mean, we didn't even necessarily talk about that part of theater, but I remember like when I was in college, the best parties usually were the theater people, but theater people are very creative. So they find ways to have fun. And sometimes the way they have fun, if if you're not careful and don't have demarcations, you get yourself caught up in a situation that you can't
It's
get yourself out of.
real.
So
It's
and while
real.
being Christian. So and sometimes and let's say most of the time it's usually fun stuff that they're doing because they're creative people. And when you're creative, just like they're creative, you can be creatively, doing some stuff you ain't got no business to be doing. Yeah.
No,
I'm just
it's
speaking for
real.
myself, depending on what your standard is. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm
It's
just asking,
real.
like, so then how do you balance that? You know what I mean? Because you want to
Yeah.
enjoy life. You still want to, be a part of the camaraderie with your colleagues,
Yeah.
but then you also are a believer and have a certain standard. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like, how do you balance it?
Absolutely. I think for me, I know that just as the scripture says, all things are possible through Christ. Nothing is possible without him. And I have to tell I don't have to tell myself that every day. It's something that I remind myself every day. I do this because this is a gift that was given to me through Christ, from Christ. This is my purpose. I'm a strong believer in that. My purpose is to touch others through my music, through my performing, whether that's music that I write or performance on the stage. It's to bring people to Christ, whatever that means for them. I don't tell them what to do. I just am there in their life. And if they feel compelled to start coming to church, or if they feel compelled to start believing in Jesus, then my job is done. And I think that that's something that I'm still exploring as well. But I think because of how crazy life can be as a theater artist, how demanding, how infuriating, all of the feelings, it can be a lot. I like to remind myself, bring myself to center by going to church, even just being in the building. And I found a church in New York because as much as I love my home church,
Nice.
I don't love watching church on my computer. I love to be
Understood.
in the building. So I found a church in New York that I really loved, and that would challenge me in the way that I would think as well. Sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing this right. And they're like, well, what happens if you did this way, this way, and that this way instead? Would you be on the right path if you were doing that, or if you were still doing the way that you were doing it? And I'm like, okay. So it really is a good reminder. And even like the hard days would be like Sundays, going on Sundays after doing 2 shows on Saturdays. I would go to bed. I would get home by like 11. I wouldn't wind down and go to bed until like 12:30, 1 o'clock. And then if I was singing that Sunday, I would have to wake up by 6:30 to be at the church by 7
Right. Mhm.
to start service at 10 o'clock. There's 2 services. So it would be hard, but because I knew I had to do it, because I knew I wanted to do it, I wasn't forcing myself. I could have said no. They ask you if you want to sing and you can say no. But I said yes. And because I know I needed that to keep me grounded, to keep me in line, I sacrificed it. 5 hours of sleep. I would do it. I would sleep. I would wake up. I would go to church, and then I would do the
Right. I
show
hear that.
because I needed that. I needed that centering after a week of performing, of being somebody else for 2.5 hours every day, sometimes twice. That's a lot. And I need to replenish on a smaller scale weekly by going to church and reminding myself of the ethics and the morals that I've placed in my life and where they stand and within what I do. And I think even within that, I've had people reach out to me and be like, hey, like, what church are you going to? And blah, blah, blah. Do you like it? Can I come with you? Can I do this? Can I do that with you? And I've gotten a lot of people, even some of the people at church called me a gatherer because I would always
Okay.
bring
Well, you
in,
gather. Go on,
yeah.
evangelists, and gather.
Right. They called me a gatherer because every week I was bringing somebody else. And it makes me happy because I didn't ask anybody to come to church with me. I would just post about it. I would share videos on Instagram, and people would reach out to me and be like, hey, can I come to church with you? Or, hey, what's the name of the church that you're going to? And all of that stuff. And that makes me happy because that means that light that God has put in me is shining out, and people are seeing that, and that's drawing people closer to him. That's all I
That's
ever
right.
want. So knowing that there's still, to answer the question in a smaller sense, knowing that there is a purpose that I have to fulfill keeps me going. It gives me fuel in my gas tank. It inspires me to keep going because I know that I'm that vessel for somebody. If not for anybody else, I do it for me because I need it. So I think it's all worth it. It sounds like a sacrifice, but it's worth it.
And,
Yeah.
but I also think that it's great that you are fulfilling what you've set in your mind to fulfill and to accomplish within your life. Because, when living purposefully, it's, a matter of making a decision, determining a path, and staying the course. Because sometimes people will say that they're going to do something or, make something happen, or this is kind of like, the vision I have, but to actually implement the work, that's where the effort and the energy is. But then it's rewarding when you see the result, because you know that you put forth the effort. And
Yeah.
so, I always look at it from the perspective of there's a flip side to each coin, meaning whether you put forth the effort or not, you end up with the result, with the result that either you're going to feel great about or
Yeah.
you're not going to like. So do you put forth the effort to see the result that you were hoping to see, or even better?
Yeah.
Or do you not put forth any effort and then you just got to live with what happens by
Yeah.
happenstance, like, and so like, to be in the driver's seat of your life, and while, of course, God gets the, the glory. I think that's great because that's a way for a light to really to not only shine but to be seen. I mean, and I
Yeah.
think that that's proof, because you consistently follow through with what you have said. Well, this is what's going to happen, and I already could see it in my life, so I'm just going to continue to move forward. And if it
Yeah.
was contrary to what God wanted, then it wouldn't happen.
Very much that.
You know,
Very much
I mean,
that.
and so I think it's awesome what you're doing, what you've accomplished. And I have to say this, and excuse me, because I don't want to necessarily have a moment where I sound like just some old auntie. But I remember when I used to babysit you. Mm. Mariah, I remember when I used to babysit you when you were little and you were reading chapter books at 3 years old. And to see you in theater now and you on Broadway, I was like, that girl, I knew she was gonna make it. I remember when we used to go to the RCA plays and stuff when you were in high
Yeah.
school. And then just go to watch you sing, at the national anthem at some random, place. I was like, I already know she's gonna make it. But but it's one of the, so to see you actually, accomplish where you've already set that you were going to accomplish, that is rewarding for those around you. But it's because you maintain the course. And I think I was recently doing another recording, and I believe it's already posted, but we were discussing how to actually implement or to manifest something that you have established requires putting forth the energy. And sometimes that might appear as though from externally or from social stereotypes that a
Yeah.
female, especially for females, that we're having to be selfish. But it doesn't mean you're selfish if you're implementing something that has to do with a vision or a
Yeah.
purpose that is set for your life.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if you're staying the course of where you are, your light is going to shine, and that will automatically attract other people to you that will be able to continue on with your life, or that you would be able to touch their lives in a positive sense, rather
Yeah.
than being a people pleaser and doing stuff for the sake of what other people need and forgetting about the vision or the mission or the purpose for your life.
Yeah.
So it's
And
like,
sometimes you have to be a little bit selfish. I think
Mhm.
we put such a terrible and negative connotation on the word and the idea of being selfish. But in a
Mhm.
situation like that, I feel like you have to be able to cultivate yourself and do the work
Mhm.
for yourself by yourself, so that when
Right.
when you are with people, you're not doing it for the benefit of people, but people see the work that you've done for yourself so much so that they want to do it too. It's
Right.
less of a idea of
Exactly.
people pleasing, but it's you pleased people. Like I don't know how to explain it, but you're not
But
actively
it's the intentions or the motivation is different.
exactly, exactly.
Hmm. So it's like the result is that people are pleased, but not that the intention is to please people in order to get to a particular result.
Yeah,
It's a flip.
yeah,
And so I think that's awesome. And that also really is, empowering from, a self perspective. And again, even being Christian, saying self doesn't mean that there's a denial of God, but it actually is, a way to be able to express him even greater, because to choose to utilize every skill set, every talent and gift that was deposited in you from conception, or
yeah,
even before the time, because God created us in spirit before we were in physical body, and to actually implement all that God has created you to be, then that's like a testament to hold on
yeah,
hold on, I'm getting excited because I think it's awesome. You know what? I think that God gets more glory when people actually really do fully show up with what he has given us.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. If not, then what's the point? If I'm not
Mm-hmm.
using my voice to glorify God in any capacity, then why bother having a voice?
Mm-hmm.
Truly, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's just
Mm-hmm.
the way that I think about it. A lot of people might not agree with that, but like,
I
what good
agree
is
with that
the
statement.
world if I'm not pleasing God?
Mm-hmm.
What good is my talent? What good is being on Broadway if not one person sees that and says, how did you do that? And my answer is God. And they're not changed by that. Well, if they're not, then what's the point?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's real.
Yeah, yes, right. I thank you so much for sharing your story. Honestly, a conversation could continue for a while. At the same time, I respect your time because I know that you have I don't know how many more albums that you're about to record. So I'm gonna let you get to your creative process. Okay.
Thank you.
And thank you for taking a moment for, your auntie,
Yeah.
who happens to be a doctor. It's just, we just have all these great people in our family. You know what I mean? Just
You
all these
sure
great people.
do.
Now, how can the viewers get in contact with you if they would like to connect with you?
Yes. So I am on all social media under the name Mariah Lyttle, Lyttle. I have music out as well on Apple Music, Spotify, any streaming service. Same name, Mariah Lyttle. I have 2 songs right now and an EP on the way, which is exciting as of yesterday. So I'm
Yes,
very
that's
excited.
awesome. Yeah.
What else? Yeah, I think the social media, Mariah Lyttle on Instagram, on Twitter. I don't have like a public Facebook page, so don't add me on Facebook because I'm not gonna add you back. But
She's
yeah,
being
that's
very kind. Maintain a boundary because if you want to hear from Auntie will speak with you. Okay,
okay.
thank you.
Okay.
Hey,
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Cunningham.
it's okay. I'm still Norja to you because I'm Auntie. Okay, so,
That's right.
but yeah, I am so glad that you joined the channel today, and also to the viewers, thank you so much for watching Life Lessons with Dr. Cunningham. And until next time, you all have a great one.